8:14 a.m., August 6, 1945. The Japanese city of Hiroshima was bustling with daily life under a calm, cloudless sky. High above the Pacific, a US B-29 bomber plane carried a weapon unlike anything humanity had ever used. At 8:15 in the morning, a blinding flash brighter than 1,000 suns erupted 600 meters above the city. In an instant, tens of thousands of lives were erased, stone melted into shadows, and the warfare rules changed forever. 3 days later, a second atomic weapon tore through the valley of Nagasaki, driving the Japanese Empire to surrender.
Was this bomb a tragic military necessity, or the devastating opening chapter of a nuclear arms race that continues to hold civilization hostage? But how did humanity create such a destructive weapon? And why was it even used?
QUESTANS presents Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What led to the atomic bombings?
For centuries, the atom was thought to be the smallest, indivisible building block of matter. Then 20th century physics revealed something astonishing. The atom contained an immense amount of hidden energy. In 1938, experiments in Germany revealed that uranium could split apart, a process scientists called nuclear fission. More critically, each split nucleus could release extra neutrons capable of triggering an uncontrollable, exponential chain reaction. Scientists now feared that Nazi Germany might turn this discovery into an unprecedented weapon.
In 1939, scientists Einstein and Szilard wrote a letter to US President Roosevelt warning about a possible nuclear bomb.
The warning helped convince the United States that nuclear research could no longer remain purely scientific. Then Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, bringing the United States directly into the Second World War. In 1942, the United States launched the Manhattan Project, a vast secret effort to turn nuclear physics into a working weapon. At Oak Ridge, Tennessee, enormous facilities were built to separate the rare uranium needed for a bomb. At Hanford, reactors were built to produce another path to the bomb, plutonium. At Los Alamos, in the remote mountains of New Mexico, scientists faced the final challenge: designing a weapon that would actually work. Theoretical calculations crystallized into two radically different physical bomb designs. The first, Little Boy, was a gun assembly mechanism, firing a subcritical projectile of uranium-235 down a modified artillery barrel. The second, Fat Man, was an intricate spherical implosion device, using explosive lenses to crush a solid plutonium core to critical density. Hundreds of thousands contributed to the project, most unaware of its full purpose, and the race was against time. By 1945, years of theory, engineering, and secrecy had produced something terrifyingly real. But before the weapon could be used, the scientists had to answer one final question: would it work? By July 1945, the first atomic weapon was ready for its ultimate test. In the New Mexico desert, a massive steel tower stood ready beneath the night sky. At the top of the tower, technicians hoisted the test device, an ominous tangle of cables and explosive lenses nicknamed the Gadget. Then, before dawn on July 16, 1945, the countdown began.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
In concrete observation bunkers miles away, scientists and soldiers lay face down in the sand, holding dark welder's glass to protect their eyes. At 5:29 on the morning of July 16, 1945, the countdown reached zero. The desert night was erased. An artificial star expanded upward, searing the atmosphere with temperatures 4 times hotter than the center of the sun. Seconds later, the violent shockwaves slammed into the bunkers, rattling concrete and kicking up a wall of desert sand. At ground zero, the steel tower was vaporized, and the desert sand was transformed into a green, glassy mineral named trinitite.
For Manhattan Project director Oppenheimer, the success carried a profound realization. The world had entered a new age. Oppenheimer later recalled a line from the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
The test had answered the question. The atomic bomb worked. Now the question was no longer whether the weapon could work, but whether it should be used. In May 1945, Nazi Germany surrendered unconditionally. With the European War concluded, the focus of the entire atomic enterprise shifted completely to the Pacific Theater and the Japanese Empire. Across the Pacific, years of brutal fighting had brought enormous casualties on both sides. The battle for Iwo Jima showed American commanders how fiercely Japanese forces could resist. Then came Okinawa, one of the bloodiest battles of the Pacific War. Okinawa cost hundreds of thousands of lives, including civilians. American planners now faced the prospect of invading Japan's densely populated home islands. The planned invasion, known as Operation Downfall, was expected to be extraordinarily difficult and potentially devastating.
Hundreds of thousands of Allied casualties were projected if such an invasion was undertaken. Japanese cities were already being devastated by conventional bombing.
The atomic bomb, however, promised something fundamentally different: the destruction of a city with a single weapon. Allied commanders hoped that the atomic bomb was their only option, to bring the bloody Pacific War to a swift end with a decisive blow.
In July 1945, Allied leaders met at Potsdam, while Truman carried news of a weapon, unlike any before it. On July 26, the Allies demanded Japan's surrender, warning of prompt and utter destruction if it refused. Japanese PM Suzuki responded with mokusatsu, withholding comment, which Allied leaders treated as outright defiance. With the atomic weapon now proven, Truman approved its use against Japan if surrender did not come. On July 25, the formal order was issued to drop the first atomic bomb as soon after August 3 as weather permitted. On Tinian Island, the first atomic weapon was ready. Its target would soon be Hiroshima.
Before dawn on August 6, 3 B-29s crossed the Pacific toward Japan. Below them, Hiroshima was beginning an ordinary summer morning. The morning sky was clear. At 8:09 a.m., the city's air raid sirens sounded, but were dismissed as an all-clear reconnaissance pass. At approximately 8:15, the B-29 Enola Gay released the uranium bomb called Little Boy.
Seconds later, a blinding flash brighter than the sun erupted above the city. The first atom bomb had exploded. A pulse of thermal radiation swept across the ground at the speed of light, raising surface temperatures to 4,000 Celsius. A hypersonic blast wave traveling faster than sound flattened 69% of the city's buildings in a matter of seconds. Multiple individual fires merged into a colossal firestorm, generating gale-force winds that sucked oxygen from streets. People in the open were instantly carbonized, leaving permanent, ghostly silhouettes etched onto stone walls and steps. Those who survived the first moments emerged into fire, injuries, confusion, and unimaginable destruction. By nightfall, 80,000 people were dead or dying. Hiroshima had ceased to exist as a functioning city. And an invisible danger remained: radiation, whose effects many survivors did not yet understand.
But Hiroshima did not immediately bring the surrender American leaders had hoped for. Then, on August 8, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan and invaded Japanese-held Manchuria. While this new crisis unfolded, another atomic bomb was already waiting on Tinian Island. On August 9, another B-29 took off, carrying a plutonium weapon called Fat Man. The primary target was Kokura, one of Japan's biggest military arsenals and ammunition site, but clouds and smoke obscured the city. With fuel running low, the crew turned toward their secondary target, Nagasaki. At 11:02 that morning, the second atomic bomb exploded above Nagasaki.
Nagasaki's surrounding hills absorbed some of the blast, but the destruction of the city's main areas was still immense. Thousands were killed immediately, while many others would later die from burns, injuries, and radiation.
In 3 days, 2 Japanese cities had experienced the first atomic attacks in human history. Japan was now facing 2 unprecedented shocks: atomic destruction and Soviet invasion. Cornered, Japan's leaders remained divided over whether to continue fighting or accept surrender.
Emperor Hirohito ultimately intervened in the fierce debate, supporting acceptance of the Allied surrender terms.
On August 15, millions of Japanese people heard Emperor Hirohito's voice on the radio, announcing Japan's surrender. The Second World War was over.
But for many Hiroshima and Nagasaki nuclear bombing survivors, the battle was just beginning. Many of them were afflicted by a horrific, mysterious illness that was till then unknown to conventional medicine. Radiation exposure caused serious illnesses that could appear days, months, or even years after the explosions. These sicknesses were as a result of ionizing radiation that had shattered cellular DNA at the molecular level. Many survivors had to live with permanent scarring, increased keloid risk, and drastically elevated chances of leukemia. These atomic bomb survivors, known as hibakusha, often faced social discrimination and ostracization. The hibakusha became living examples of the disastrous human consequences that the nuclear weapons left in their wake.
In 1949, the Soviet Union tested its own atomic weapon. The arms race was on between 2 superpowers. Soon, atomic weapons became vastly more powerful, and hydrogen bombs pushed destructive power to an entirely new scale.
A terrifying strategy emerged if nuclear war meant mutual destruction. Perhaps fear itself could prevent war. For decades, millions lived beneath the shadow of this Cold War that could potentially destroy civilization.
Two Japanese cities, 2 atomic detonations, and a permanent fracture line across human civilization. The question of whether Hiroshima and Nagasaki were necessary remains one of history's most enduring debates. The history of August 1945 proves that scientific genius, detached from moral wisdom, can transform a science discovery into a threat to human existence. The legacy of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is therefore more than a story of war. It is a warning about the power of human choices. As modern nuclear arsenals expand and geopolitical tensions rise, we should remember one thing. In a nuclear war, there can be no victors, only victims. Atomic bombings is not merely a chapter in history, but a permanent question. Can humanity master its own destructive power before that power masters us?
Thanks for watching. Keep visiting for more QUESTANS episodes.